Welcome to Orthodox Christian Theology. This is Craig Trulia, and we just pulled Paul out of bed. How are we doing, Paul?
Going extremely well. It is a nice 7:10 a.m. here in Australia, and yes, that is true. I literally woke up at 6:59 a.m. Like 11 minutes ago because my alarm didn't go off when it was meant to.
I'm a bona fide old man. I woke up at like 3-something this morning, and when I was done my prayers, I wasn't back to sleep. Like, I'm not getting back to sleep, so I just went on with my day. And
Fair enough.
yeah, I don't know. It sucks getting old. Like, you actually wake up because of pain and whatnot. I'm the youngest looking old guy ever. That's for sure.
True.
So,
I can vouch for that.
You can vouch for that. What are you vouching for?
I could vouch for that. Actually, I think you might be my. How old are you again?
I'm 40.
Oh, you're 40. Okay, wow. I thought you were just early mid-30s. Okay, I forgot about that. There you go.
Yeah, no, I'm very old. There you go. People need to respect their elders, you know. And I got to take those people and put them over my knee and give them rhetorical spanking.
Woo, lad. Whoa.
No, that being said, today we're talking about why can't Prots be cool with Mary? And it's going to be kind of a tongue-in-cheek show. We're not curing cancer here. So we're just going to jump right into it. And I'm going to start picking. I'm going to pick some bones with you. And I'm concerned about this. Why don't you believe that Mary really appeared in Spain to all the Spanish girls?
Look,
I mean, it's scientific fact that it occurred. Flat out scientific fact.
On the contrary, Craig.
On the contrary. You know, atheists saw her appear. Full-blown atheists, they wouldn't lie about it.
Was that written in the Bible?
No, it was written in a more reliable source, a Spanish newspaper.
More reliable source.
That's right.
Here we go.
This is
Eastern Christianity, boys and girls.
And I hear that this apparition appeared also to the Masons, and they wouldn't lie about it either.
Oh, of course. Here we go. This is Orthodox theology, ladies and gentlemen. Solar Spanish newspapers and solar Freemasons. This is
Fatima, but I've been told from a very popular Roman Catholic channel that if the Fatima apparition did not occur, and that is much more morally certain than the resurrection. That's what this channel said, right? Much more morally certain than the resurrection. Then we can't even know God's real unless Fatima occurred.
That's true.
So I mean, how do you even believe in God, Paul?
Well, that is honestly a great question. That's why we just have our Bibles alone. The Bible is the epistemological axiom sine qua non. It is before we even have the law of non-contradiction, the law of identity, and the law of the excluded middle. Before we even have that, we have the Bible. The Bible gives us those things first. Then we have some good boys in the chatty.
Sola Freemasons.
So true.
Sola Freemasons is where the truth is at. You know, there was a popular Roman Catholic channel, and they actually did all the statistics of the probability of Fatima versus God being real. Fatima was higher.
Yep.
Fatima was higher. You know, it's honestly, you're a fool if you don't believe it. Because again, Spanish newspaper, people wouldn't lie about, thousands of people were looking at the sun. They had to be looking for some reason. I've never seen thousands of people looking at the sun. Something had to be happening.
You know, that is a compelling argument. Why would anyone be looking at the sun at all, except if Mary appeared?
Well, and then there's this other one. There's the fact that there's these other Marian apparitions, right? And so, did you hear Mary appeared in Egypt over years, standing on top of a building? They're saying, "Don't jump," but she didn't because she's Mary, right? And the Egyptians don't lie. That's in true. Fact. So you're tell me the truth, Paul. You doubt the apparition in Zaytun?
I 100% doubt the. Okay, wait. Is this joking or is this
being
being ironic?
100% doubt. 100%.
Is this tongue in cheek or is this unironic? This one for Zaytun?
It's whatever you want it to be.
Whatever I want it to be. Okay, we're going into full clown world here. Zaytun, I doubt it so much that if Zaytun was real, I probably would doubt everything else I believe. It just goes against all knowledge.
Goes against all knowledge that thousands of people saw something and they have no reason to lie because it's racist to say Egyptians lie. In fact, it's racist to say that they could be mistaken.
Mate,
right?
how
dare you even suggest it? I feel it's blasphemy that I even say it in jest.
Don't tempt me with insulting the Egyptians if you're saying it's racist against them, mate.
Why? Is this because you're half Lebanese or something? Is this like a Lebanese versus Egypt thing?
Well, if you're saying, hey, if you say this, that's racist against the Egyptians, I'm much more inclined now.
You're much more like you just heard it. Egyptians can't lie, and that was a really cool like interview. Like it was like 2020 style. You couldn't see everything during it. You guys are too young, probably don't even know what 2020 is. Maybe it's an American thing actually. but Pastor Ben knows what 20. He has to. I mean, hope he does. To date myself.
2020. That's 2020 is when I started my channel.
No, remember this, Tony? Remember in 2020, we still had we ran in cars with our feet, and that's how we got everywhere. You know, we would get off work and then go, and go down the dinosaur and eat Bronto burgers.
I
mean, those are look. We got to view. I was born in 2020.
Far out, Cleve. You young and unbelievable, mate.
No, that makes you kind of old on the internet. You know, you got these 3-year-olds, you know, using sock puppet accounts that are trolling you using Chat GPT. It's a different world. A totally different world.
It is.
So it's all right. So being that you're such a radical skeptic that you doubt that Egyptians could be mistaken, that you think they're mistaken, you think they're lying, you don't take them at their word. The question then is, what level of evidence would you need for a real Marian apparition?
The level of evidence I would need, there's 2 possible levels of evidence that I would take. One is 5 million independent, verified, cross-examined witnesses, each.
So tens of thousands not good enough. We need 5 million.
No, tens of thousands is pathetic. That doesn't give you justified true belief.
You know, this is an impossible burden of proof. You need to give something realistic, something like
on the contrary,
2 children and maybe 1 adult. And I'd say we'd have moral certainty that they're not mistaken. They knew what they were looking at.
You drive a hard bargain. This is like let's
meet a little
show. You know the TV show PAWN porn, as in pawn shop stars. The Rick guy, where some guy asks him, "Oh, can you do I'll give you this for $1,000," and then Rick's like, "Best I can do is 20." So here I'm asking, I need 5 million witnesses, and you're like, "Best I can do is 2 children."
Okay. Final offer: 2 children, an older sister, and they tell the story immediately, mind you, to a to a pretty skeptical, well-read priest, because he wouldn't lie either.
You drive a hard bargain. Let me call in a buddy of mine. He's an expert on 2 children and a sister who immediately tell testimony of a Marian apparition.
No, we have it. Pics or it didn't happen. They have pics. They're staring at the sky. They're staring at the sky. What are they staring at? What are they staring at? Come on, people. Come on. So, all right. So let's break the 4th wall and talk a little more seriously for a moment. Then we get back to being
just for a moment. Then we get back to the real stuff. Yeah.
Back to the real stuff. What do you just feel about Marian apparitions in general? Like, is it just like a strange thing? What do you think they really are? I mean, they're a thing. They've been reported in church history being in the 4th century. If I remember right, St. Gregory of Nazianzus speaks of Gregory, the Illuminator, allegedly getting a creed from a Marian apparition. So we have them recorded pretty early from mainstream sources. So the question is, what is this in your opinion?
Sorry, good question. Just woke up, remember? But I don't think about them too much. As it stands with my theology, I'm not in principle against them. I mean, it would basically just be another case of like Samuel appearing to the witches at Endor, or the witch at Endor.
Well, I'm going to interrupt. What appeared? Was that really Samuel, or was it a demon?
I mean, I just kind of take it at face value. It just says the Elohim of Samuel, the spirit of Samuel appeared. I kind of just take that as is. Like, if God made Samuel appear. Why not? He can take people up out of Hades and say, "Hey, do this," and then all right, back you go. Yeah,
but through a witch though. That's a
it was like it was like God was basically hijacking the session because the witch
there were two children there, and an older sister, right? So that's how
true. That's why I believe the account.
It seems like a different burden of proof that we have here. Most fathers actually say it's demonic. It's interesting.
I don't know.
But okay, continue.
Yeah. So anyway, there's that. So in principle, I'm not against apparitions. The key thing for me is, well, what end do they affect? Like, when there's an apparition, what does it affect in the people who see it? What end does it bring it to them?
Well,
that's basically the ultimate test for discerning true versus false spirits, basically.
So, for example, there was an apparition of a cross over Jerusalem. It's recorded by Saint Cyril of Jerusalem. It's part of hagiographies. I'm not going to say, oh, they wrote this down. It's on paper. I'm going to convince atheists with this. So it's not that level of proof. But more, my question would be to what you're saying. Don't you think the fruits of this, being that in the beginning of the 4th century, you have a land that's mostly pagan and Jewish, and at the end of the 4th century, it's mostly Christian, that at least if this apparition did occur, it seems like the fruits of this apparition was conversions to Christianity. Seems like good fruits. Would this be a reasonable way, or at least one of the ways we judge some sort of apparition?
Well, yeah, assuming the account, because I haven't read those accounts, but assuming it's just pretty much as straightforward as that, mostly pagan area, apparition happens, ton of people convert from that, then that would be one simple criteria of saying, okay, that was legit.
Now, like this is one, I forget the picture, the Lady of Guadalupe. There's the historical, from what I could tell, the historical myth that Mexico converted in mass because the Lady of Guadalupe. From what I could tell, it's kind of like something retroactively read into the past, and conversions.
That's what I've found too. Yeah, I did like some little research thing years ago on that, and I found it was probably a little bit of an invented story.
Well, it's whether the Lady Guadalupe, isn't she appearing on some sort of like textile, some sort? So that occurred. The question is, what was the significance of this? And what we don't have, if we're just going to be impartial, is the proof that yes, millions of Aztecs and Mayans and whatever indigenous peoples, they converted. That's what convinced them. It's just read into the past. But I would say with the Lady of Guadalupe, what we don't have is a lot of hysteria and strangeness around it. If anything, it at least had a gradual positive effect, but so would European colonization in a pagan land, right?
Yeah, exactly.
We have our positive influences. But then when we compare this, let's say, to Fatima, what's the fruits of Fatima? A million secret prophecies that we can't really know. Spain didn't become more Christian. It's like, listen, it's like, just from the spiritual criteria, I have very good reasons to doubt this, because I don't see the fruits of this, because the saints see into the future. They're not going to appear and then everything's going to turn to what, right? That's not what they're after. They're not after making spectacles. And this is when I sent you the screen caps of the comments on the Zaytun apparition, where it's like, I'm just asking the questions. what are the fruits of this? And people are like, you're a horrible human being. How dare you ask the question?
Oh boy, do I know that well.
Well, I thought we're supposed to test the spirits, right?
Yeah.
Is that like a minimal amount of testing? So
yeah, absolutely. Like, you sent me those comments and I was like, hey, fair questions. Like, why can't he ask those? I mean,
I'm not saying I'm not even saying I know the answer. They're not rhetorical questions. They are earnest questions. I suspect what the answer is, judging by how we're responding, right? Like, so oftentimes if you have the truth, you don't respond with "you're a terrible human being. How dare you think such a thing?" Right? If that's your way of defending something, you tend not to have the evidence on your side. At least you don't think you do. You could be right, but you don't have the evidence to prove that you're right. And so, like with Zaytun, one thing we want to be sensitive to is that if there were conversions, you're not going to have like people writing to Cairo newspapers and stuff. I converted because I saw the Theotokos or something like that. Strictly because you could get persecuted. The only Egyptian Christian that I have any correspondence with, he just left Egypt and went to Greece. Because this soft persecution, they might not be cutting heads off in the street every second there. There are still martyrs in Egypt, but he's a Greek Orthodox priest, Alexandrian Patriarchate, obviously formerly. Now he's in Greece, Father Fatty. And, he left because the persecutions and the fact that you can't have a job and people know you're a Christian and then you could lose your job and sort of basic considerations. Mm-hmm. So if there were conversions, but, people are being more on the down low about it, the question then is, where are the people stepping forward? Yes, my grandmother converted. That's how her whole family's Christian or something like that from Islam. And we just don't have that. We just have, trust me, bro, people converted based on what? How dare you say Egyptians would lie? Right? How dare you doubt that? And it's not very compelling. And I think ultimately speaking, when people, if they're not carried away with some sort of enthusiasm, look into this stuff critically, they're going to feel like they've been lied to, is my opinion.
Yeah, perhaps so. That's why it would be probably most useful to look at certain because when was Zaytun again? When exactly was it?
If I remember right, it was late 60s.
Late 60s. Okay, so there's still I believe there's still like witnesses alive. I believe Gavin Ortland, he mentioned like an evangelical pastor from there who was like, "Oh yeah, I was there. I believe it." Yeah, and so interviewing witnesses like that would be most interesting to see the effect it had on them.
Well, the interesting in Cleve Antiquity, when he interviewed someone in his church, the person was on. She thought it was married, so everyone was seeing, and said, maybe I saw the form as something, and I saw light. Well, what'd she say? She didn't say anything. How do you know it's Mary? We just know she was a woman. She was wearing clothes. You know what I mean? So like when the people are speaking honestly, where are the details here? Where comes this certainty? And so there is a question, and there is actually a means for some of this, which is, again, spiritual fruit. If people have clarity instead of confusion, if they have soberness instead of I don't know, mania. Right? Like we see this in St. Anthony of the Desert, where he speaks of how he discerns actual angels from demons and things like this. And we have a clarification here. She said she saw the profile of the Theotokos.
Okay.
But here's a good question. And right, you go to church with her, so you could just ask her. And the question would be, how tall was she? The archaeological evidence is that she was something 4.5 feet tall. It's in one of my things, and we have a tomb of hers, and we know that's how tall she is from the tomb itself. But the fathers that report her height is that she was very short. How tall was the apparition? She was bodily assumed. So if it's her, it's physically her body. But most people don't know that the archaeological evidence is that she was very short. And so, she's tall, she's beautiful, all these things. And it's, well, then what were you really seeing based upon the actual archaeological evidence that we have? Maybe the archaeological evidence is wrong. But these are important questions. And I just think people get caught up in enthusiasm and they don't ask serious questions. So we have this. What do you think of Saint Euphemia choosing the Diaphysite Creed of Chalcedon? What do Orientals say about that situation? I mean, do you have any opinion on that, Paul? Do you even know the situation?
Not particularly. I just know Chalcedon, certain details of it, and particularly the interactions with the Bishop of Rome, but not quite what Euphemia did.
Yeah, it's going by memory. I know this for a fact. In the hagiographies, they essentially say they took put the, a monophysite creed in her hand, and like she turned upside down, and they put the right creed, it was the other way or something like that. And so her body testified as to the truth of the Chalcedonian Creed. And that being said, if you actually do read, I think it's a letter from Leo and a letter from St. Leo and a letter from St. Antonius, they do say in the letter, they don't go into the whole story, but they do say Saint Euphemia has declared with us the Creed of Chalcedon. And when you read the footnote from Father Richard Price, the footnote says they're speaking figuratively, right? That being said, you could say, well, that he doesn't say he's speaking figuratively. He just says that Saint Euphemia did this, right? And so, that being said, as a Eastern Orthodox Christian, this is a liturgically commemorated miracle. I accept it. Is there some level of historical evidence that doesn't contradict the hagiographic details? Yes. Am I going to think this will convince people that aren't Eastern Orthodox? No.
Yeah.
So it's like I accept this miracle. It's not inconsistent with written history. And it's not inconsistent with what I think would be fruits and things to this effect. But do I have this independent corroboration where it would convince other people? No. So hence I'd want to be a little more circumspect in saying, oh, you just lost the debate, Subdeacon Daniel. St. Euphemia has already decided this question. We'd have to have, there's a different standard of evidence for something like that. We got this question. Will you respond to new Ancient Past TV video? I watch it and I think that it is very bad. And I think that it basically makes one argument that is about bishops in the early, I don't even know what the video is. It was like about the Presbyterian.
Let's look this. Oh, sorry, Ancient Past TV. Yes. I remember that. Yeah, it's that Presby or evangelical channel.
He's Orthodox Presbyterian.
Yeah. What's it? Let's see what the latest video is.
The point is, I don't have any plans to respond. I thought his failure of Eastern Orthodoxy, or whatever, I think that's what it was called, was a well-made video. It had salient points. I didn't agree with them, but they were salient points, right? Like, look at this crazy stuff I don't agree with in the hagiographies. Like, you don't usually hear that apologetics, and we have to seriously, like, imagine they believe dead bodies are declaring doctrine. Well, yeah, right? It's worth bringing up. It's worth bringing up. It's worth bringing up in an apologetic context, certainly. I thought his Filioque video was actually pretty bad. It just required a hopeful reading of, like, what's it called? Quote mines. And it's just such old hat where it's like, all right, no offense, Protestants. Protestants, you kind of have to take a seat here. Eastern Orthodox Roman Catholics are kind of like the big leagues. They're like single A when it comes to this question. So it just, I don't think that video is so well done. The video, it sounds like he made now on, I guess, a Presbyterian form of governance, supposedly being the original form of governance, I don't think is very justifiable. Again, first chapter, Rise and Fall of the Papacy above, a link to purchase the book, I think, if I'm doing my job, is in the info thing below. But that being said, gets into the detail. There's just all the explicit evidence points to an episcopal form of governance. And I'm sure as a faithful Anglican, you agree.
As a faithful Anglican, I totally agree in presbyteral governance. Now, I mean, it's interesting. So his latest video on the channel is the patristic roots of the Reformed faith. That came out 8 hours ago. And from what the commenter said, it must go into the issue of like bishops in the early church. So I presume it goes along with the argument of, well, originally there wasn't a 3-tier holy order thing. It was 2 tiers. And then eventually bishop and presbyter was distinguished and all that stuff. And that's an account I generally actually agree with. And a number of Anglicans, historic Anglicans actually agree. But here's the thing. I actually more agree, not with the Presbyterian account of that, but with more the account from Alistair C. Stewart in his, the original bishops, where normally that argument is paired with, well, individual congregational churches, they were run by a council of presbyters, and then eventually they chose a chief bishop among them to lead, blah, blah, blah. Alistair Stewart says, actually, no, it's the other way around. Congregational churches were actually led by a single bishop-like leader, and those leaders would gather regionally into a presbytery, and then eventually that regional presbytery chose like a monarchic bishop among them. But on the congregational level, from the beginning, his argument is that the individual congregations basically had like a congregational bishop, like a senior pastor. That's kind of the thesis I lean towards myself. So it's even there, it's not fully like the presbys would do.
I just find it strange that at Qumran they had a mevakir, which is a bishop in Hebrew, and then that disappears. They become Presbyterians for a little while, then they become Episcopal. I don't know. I just find that a hard,
yes, I do
remember a hard
that
line of reasoning, and oh yeah, we have someone writing in the first decade of the 2nd century, and he just presumes everyone's got a singular bishop, and there's this. He must have just invented it. Yeah, that sounds. Okay. We have this. The Albert Pike, in his work, The Morals and Dogma of Freemasonry, admits they worship Lucifer. Yeah, which is why would they lie about seeing Mary? That's my point, right? Why would they lie about that?
X to doubt with that one.
We have the Orthodox Confession, the Monophysite Confession, were both laid with her by Saint Euphemia simultaneously after 3 days, and clerics from both sides reopened the tomb, and the Oriental Confession was below her feet. Yeah, that's what it was, right? And there you go. Debate over. We have, where can I find more information on this archaeological evidence that Theotokos height? Well, 2 things. One, go on a pilgrimage. Her tomb still exists, so you could go visit it if you want to deal with Israel blowing everyone up right now. So there you go. There's that. But also, a lot of detail is in this. 1 second. On the Dormition of Mary, all right, from Father, it's translated by Father Brian Daly, and he gets into the footnotes because, quite frankly, a lot of saints mention her height, like St. John of Damascus. It's mentioned more than once. Oh, it's not good. I'm not speaking towards the microphone. I'm knocking books down. Hey, up. You're going to watch live. All these books are going to fall over. This is like a St. Euphemia thing. There's something I said that was wrong. That being said, it's in that book from Father Brian Daly. He gets into her height, and because the saints do, and he mentions, when you use modern measurements, about 4.5 feet. So this makes sense, because if we go by the actual traditions about the Theotokos, is that she fasted and attained to theosis as a child. And she wasn't even allowed to walk until she entered the temple and things like this. And so it doesn't sound like, even from a nutritional and physical fitness standpoint, that she would have had every opportunity as other children to grow as tall. I mean, if you accept the stories, but the fact of the matter is, when they do record her height, it's short. So it's being that she was physically assumed. Do Anglicans believe that she was bodily assumed? Do you think her dead body somewhere?
That's not a normal opinion. They normally question the assumption, but it's not like rejected. Like, you can hold it and it's fine.
Yeah. So it's so that being said, we obviously accept this as fact as Eastern Orthodox, and so it is fair game to say, well, how tall was the apparition? Now, if I remember right, the Fatima apparition started as exceptionally short, like as in like shorter than the kids, like some sort of dwarf. So that also fails the height test as well, for what it's worth.
Did you see? Because he was in the comments at the start. Our buddy Jeff, A Goy for Jesus. Did you see his interview? He did it a while ago on his channel. An interview with this guy, something Marzulli, who's done original research into the Fatima apparitions, including seeing the original photo plates of the Miracle of the Sun. And he's published like a book on it. Have you seen that interview?
No.
Watch
so
it
he
when
proved,
you can.
He proved it's real, right?
He basically leans towards Fatima. I mean, he basically argues, this guy, that Fatima was basically a classic UFO phenomenon. So not quite this Marian apparition thing. and also talks about.
This leads to the bigger thing. Like, aren't UFOs like satanic deceptions? You're right.
Well, yeah, that's a big theme too. Yeah, it's a very big theme too, and I think they discussed some of that. And they actually also mentioned that there's actually a far lesser known apparition to at least one of the same children or a different child, but in the same place right before Fatima. And this apparition, or rather this manifestation of whatever being it was like some kind of like trickster being, so probably a demon, and it preceded Fatima. So it's very, very interesting.
I think it's worth saying, and that is interesting stuff. I just think it's worth saying that we're not doubting that something supernatural occurred.
Yeah, that's right.
What we're asking is, how do we know the nature of that supernatural thing? And what is the correct means of discerning that? So that being said, we have this from Timothy Honeycutt. It's much easier to accept exaggerated, lofty language towards someone we already love and trust, like Jesus, but more difficult to someone more unknown and uncertain, like Mary for Protestants. So this is the thing, right? Like, why we'd accept all this flowery things about Christ and in prayers about Christ. That's never too much. But why is it too much for Mary? Why is it too much for you to, pray these prayers to Mary?
Could you restate that again quickly? I was slightly distracted for a moment.
Now I'm going to move my camera. See this icon? Pray to it. Will you do it, Paul? Right now. Do it live. No, why not?
I cannot and I will not.
Why not? She's the protectress of Southeast Asia. That's where she is right now.
Unless I am convinced by plain reason or scripture, I cannot and will not pray.
What did Mary ever do to you?
What did Mary ever do to you?
Yeah, what did Mary ever do to you?
She stole my lollipop in school. I don't know, but
we're talking about a different Mary, right? Or is this an apparition?
Yeah, probably.
Okay.
No, that was an apparition.
Well, then don't take that out on the Theotokos now. Here's the thing. So let's talk about venerating and then praying. Are you against hymns of praise to her?
Not that one. Well, here's a funny thing. I actually am, because you might have seen on Twitter a little bit ago, I posted my first.
No, believe me, I didn't. Been busy all day.
Fair enough. Well, a little bit ago on Twitter, I posted my first written hymn, and I'm starting to make hymns now, like actually write them and all that. One of them that I'm writing right now is a Christmas hymn, which, like, the main subject of the hymn is Mary. And the main chorus, it goes, "O Holy Virgin, thou art blessed, thy womb is set apart, the Lord will on thy body rest, for thou his mother art." So there's a direct address, but it's from like the perspective of like in the story, because it's like going through the Christmas story basically. And so that kind of thing, basically advocation. So that's the distinction. It's a helpful distinction that needs to be made way more common in these discussions. Invocation versus advocation, where invocation is, "O Theotokos," or "O Saint Andrew, do this, do that." Whereas advocation is, "O Theotokos, O Saint Andrew, praise the Lord," et cetera, basically telling them to do something, like especially praise the Lord, which is all over the Psalms. So advocation, I'm very much for. And like, if there's in advocation, you sprinkle in some how great this person is in order to emphasize how great a God is.
You're fine with praises. You're fine with advocation, right? You believe Mary's praying for you right now, right?
Yes.
All right. So why can't we just sprinkle a little bit of invocation, just a little bit?
It's funny. I was talking with
a little bit small.
I was hanging out with my trad Anglican friends last night, and just before we left, I was saying how we're talking about this very issue, and I mentioned how, for me, more recently, I've come to the opinion where asking a saint to pray for you, I'm still not in favor of it for reasons I'll get into. But it's basically right on that line where if someone was to do it, I'd be like, it's not the worst thing. It's like, it's understandable, like asking a saint to pray for you. But otherwise, other prayers where you're asking him to do other things, not just that. Like the classic, "Oh, Saint Andrew, help me find my car keys," whatever.
No. Saint Anthony and Saint Fenorius find thing, and not
Sorry,
for
Saint
nothing,
Anthony, yes.
they work though. And so
source.
they find stuff. It's crazy, but they do find stuff. And so
source.
my question to you is, why don't you next time you lose your keys, pray to Saint Fenorius to help you find it? What's so wrong with that?
So the reason why I don't is because I believe that in the theology of prayer, biblical theology of prayer, is that prayer is essentially petitioning a ruling authority. You see that in scriptures, like it will say like, "Oh, and this person prayed, quote unquote, to David or to Solomon," and so on and so forth, because it's essentially petitioning the king to do something for you. And with my wider biblical theology of basically the ruling powers in heaven, God's ultimate mission through the Old Testament, but especially manifest in the New Testament, is that he's taking total direct rule over everything in the heavens. So while he establishes basically vice regents on earth, like human kings, basically, whom we can validly, quote unquote, pray to and quote unquote sacrifice to in the form of taxes, because God directly established those authorities as lesser rulers in on the earth. In the heavens, he has taken that exclusive direct role for himself. He has overthrown all of the Elohim, the council of gods, and he's taking that exclusively for himself, such that in terms of who you pray to in the heavens, he's the only valid object.
But based on what, that only God could hear petitions, because we do know that the angels bring to him petitions. We see that in Revelation chapter 8. So right, so we already know that. It's not
a question of who can hear them, like in terms of like, could saints hear what's happening on earth? Maybe, I don't know, but it's just a matter of who is the valid object, who is the valid recipient of that.
Okay, so based on the scriptures, how do we know he is the sole valid object?
It's basically through a summative reading of the whole. I have particular passages. They're in my notes somewhere, but again, I woke up.
The point's not debate. It's not the debate. This is where, like, obviously where we would disagree. I would say the scriptures aren't clear enough, just like I'd say the scriptures in total isolation aren't clear enough for the Eastern Orthodox doctrine either. Rather, the question then becomes, with what hermeneutic do you come to one or the other conclusion of the scriptures? But that being said, and like we got this Saint Fenorius, because one, Saint Fenorius helps me find thing. I have to bake a cake to share with others. No, you're a guy, unless you're Michelle and Michael's spelt wrong. Yeah, no, I think Saint Fenorius, and I'm going to say this in a nice way, is sexist, based on experience. He finds stuff. I don't need to give him anything. He's like, he's my brother in Christ. I'm totally cool with him. With my wife, he stops finding stuff she don't cook. And my wife brought this up once, and I said, he's a guy. He wants to be cooked for. He's still a man. It's not like he's not a man in heaven. So there you go. That's that. So
completely unrelated. Recently, I learned of somewhere, I think in an Anglican church in Sydney, that there is a Susan the youth worker.
I guess this must be Australian humor that I don't understand.
Do you not remember that time you absolutely busted a gut on stream when someone said, Susan the youth worker?
Now I do. Anyway, my memory is not so good. We have the Bible prohibits talking to the dead and necromancy. Problem is that the saints in heaven are very much alive, more alive than us. Therefore, it's okay to pray to them to pray for you. There you go. And we have this. I remember, Paul. See, I don't remember. I don't remember anything. My memory's so bad. God bless.
It was your discussion with Matthew Powell, P-A-O, and someone just brought up the skull of Saint Susan the youth worker.
No, I remember now. I just didn't remember it at first. Yeah. It was genuinely video was made by that lapsed Roman Catholic.
It was.
I totally lost it.
Funny, but your reaction was even funnier. Like when you lost it, I lost it.
There you go. So we have here Psalm 45, the Masoretic text, but this is a Greek translation, which is then Psalm 44. It's a Christological psalm and also a Mariological psalm. And I just want to read this here because, again, let's just talk about hermeneutics. We like to talk about the Bible on this channel. I'm one of the few Orthodox apologists that still talk about the Bible, other than Sir from Hamilton, of course. We'll get him talking about the fathers these days. He's more of a Bible guy. Now, that being said, the scripture says, "Thy throne, O God, is forever and ever. The scepter of thy kingdom is a scepter of righteousness. Thou hast loved righteousness and hated iniquity. Therefore, God, thy God, has anointed thee with the oil of gladness beyond thy fellows." So we're going to stop here for just one quick moment. This is clearly Jesus, right? We're on the same page here.
Thou hast loved right hand iniquity, therefore God, thy God has announced thee with the oil of gladness beyond thy fellows.
Yeah, right. You know, that's clearly Jesus. And so we continue. Myrrh, stocked, however you pronounce it, and cassia are exhaled from thy garments out of the ivory places, with which king's daughters have gladdened thee for thine honor. The queen stood by on thy right hand, clothed in vesture, wrought with gold, and arrayed in diverse colors. Now, this is where I'll let you say the obvious. Who's the queen and the daughters here?
So I believe, again, it's been a minute since I read this. So myrrh and stock to cassia from thy garments, and out of the ivory places with the king's daughters have gladdened thee for thine honor. The queen stood by on thy right, clothed in vesture, wrought with gold and arrayed in diverse colors. Yeah, I believe the queen's like, given what was fulfilled in the New Testament and the very constant imagery there, I believe the queen's like the church.
Like the church. And you're not a crazy person. I have them behind here. I don't want to knock down all my books. But when you read patristic exegesis of the Psalms before the 6th century, they say the queen is the church. That is not a ridiculous explanation. My opinion, there's a anti-Jewish polemic there, because my interpretation is that the daughters and are the church, but the queen is the Theotokos. We do have some later patristics because the patristic age doesn't end for us the year at Nicaea or at 500 or whatever. But really, without even getting to the fathers, I just want to say that your interpretation has very good early attestation. And so I will grant that. But just looking at what we see here, let's just tease this. Hear, O daughter, and see, and incline the ear, and forget also thy people in thy father's house. Now, this would be the queen being here discussed here, because like when a queen is then joined to the king, usually she's from another land. She's got to forget their kingdom. She's now part of the new kingdom, etc. So that's what's being referenced. Because the king has desired thy beauty, for he is thy Lord, right? We would probably mutually take a spiritual interpretation here. The beauty is here not strictly physical. We're talking about spiritual beauty. And the daughter of Tyre shall adore him with gifts, and the rich of the people of the land supplicate thy favor. And this is a more ambiguous passage because people may say, well, she's the daughter of Tyre. That's who's being addressed here. Or this is some other woman, like someone else who is bringing tribute amongst the other women here, the king's daughters and whatnot. And so showing they're venerating God, right? They're bringing him gifts. Now it continues on the queen. All her glory is that of the daughter of the king of Esabon, robed as she is in gold-fringed garments. So again, about her spiritual beauty. In embroidered clothing, virgins shall be brought to the king after her. Now, just so people are aware, historically, it's, you would get their servants, and their servants wouldn't be married. They'd have to be chaste for a while, and they'd replace them with new servants. Married women are taking care of their households and their families, not the affairs of like a queen or something. So these virgins are her servants. But this is where I think the purely ecclesiastical interpretation has some difficulty from a purely just textual view, vantage point. Because these virgins are also the church, clearly. Who are these virgins she's bringing with her? Now, if she's in some exceptional way the church, or someone exceptional in the church, and these virgins come after her, now that makes more sense. And then you start saying, well, who is that person? Again, we would say Mary. But that's why from a textual viewpoint, it's very compelling in that one strict sense. Anyway. It says, her fellows shall be brought to thee, They shall, and you're echoing there, just so you know. I don't know what.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah.
They shall be brought with gladness and exultation. They shall be led into the king's temple, which sounds to me like salvation, right? You're going to the king's temple. You're going to the kingdom of God, just like Jerusalem represents heaven, or the temple represents heaven, right? It even says so in Hebrew. So they shall be led into the king's temple. Sounds like when she comes to the king, is joined to the king, this brings salvation to those virgins, to the church. And again, this two-tiered thing that's going on here seems to inveigh against that the queen here is strictly just a church generally, because then how do we have this other church generally? Anyway, you don't have to agree. I'm just teasing out my exegesis here. Instead of thy father's children are born to thee, thou shalt make them princes over all the earth. All right. So this was interesting. Instead of thy father's children born to thee, thou shalt make them princes over all the earth. So she's birthing children. And then the very next sentence, they shall make mention of thy name from generation to generation. Therefore shall the nation give thanks to thee forever, even forever and ever. And so the emphasis here is because the sentence before is addressing her specifically, right? She is bearing children. We know that the final verse has her name being mentioned over every generation and being given thanks to her. Now, if she's a church, the idea that the nations give thanks to her forever and ever is not impossible. We see this in Isaiah, that the Gentiles and the other kingdoms bring tribute into Jerusalem. And so there is, I guess you could come to that sort of interpretation. Wouldn't it be illegitimate? But purely textually, the idea that her name is remembered from generation to generation sounds like an individual, right? And this is why I feel like a Mariological interpretation here is very important. And then we look back again at verse 13. The daughter of Tyre shall adore him with gifts, and the rich of the people shall supplicate thy favor. Who's the thy here? Because the king has desired the beauty in the next sentence. The thy here seems to be her. It's her favor that's being sought, which again, within the context that you'd seek the queen's favor in order to get to the king. It's not a unnatural reading of the text. So I really feel here in the Septuagint translation, just so people are aware, the Masoretic text, it's almost identical. There's one little difference to talk about in a second. It does seem to me at least the most obvious interpretation, not the only interpretation, not the so compelling interpretation, all other interpretations are possible, and not the earliest patristic interpretations, none of those. But I do think textually the most obvious interpretation here is that it's a psalm that's Christological. It's not meant to be taken at face value. It's talking about the future from the vantage point when this is written. And it's saying that they're supplicating her favor and her name is to be praised to all generations. I think a lot of Protestants don't get this interpretation immediately, because if you read Psalm 45 from the Masoretic text, it lacks born to thee. It says it a little bit differently, where it's unclear whether she's being addressed or now God himself is being addressed again. Because remember, God's addressed earlier in this psalm. But in the Masoretic text, it's very clear. It's the queen that's being addressed. So, this is why I feel like, just to be honest, I was saying silly things here where obviously it shows my skepticism of certain things, but I do think the Mariological interpretation here is in fact the most compelling. And I do think it's strong biblical evidence, maybe not at the level where everyone's going to, all right, I'm done being Protestant. This is the end all be all. But I do think the strongest evidence scripturally is this is a typological psalm talking about the veneration, the Theotokos. So I just teased it out. How about you tease out what you want to tease out?
Yeah, I would say it's a possible reading simpliciter, but I believe in terms of reading, well, the land shall supplicate thy favor. I think the thy actually does refer to the king. I think we see a parallelism with the semicolon there. And the daughter of Tyre shall adorn him with gifts. The rich of the people of the land shall supplicate thy favor. I believe we have the parallel between the daughter of Tyre and the rich of the people. and the land shall supplicate thy favor. That parallels the adorn him with gifts. So I believe that is referring to the king. As to the bigger issue, though, of, well, what about the distinction between the queen and the virgins? For first point, I think in the end, we shouldn't try to, when trying to see Christological, typological fulfillments of earlier Old Testament texts, that like a one-to-one correlation of every element is strictly necessary, precisely because in the end, these texts were written for a more literal meaning and application in a different space. But second of all, even with that, I think we can just simply see that the queen is the church simpliciter, but the virgins are like those within the church. And then, so the queen is leading the people in the church, the virgins, colloquially speaking, into the temple, into salvation. Basically what Cyprian says, that he cannot have God for his father who does not have the church for his mother. So the church plays an instrumental role in leading believers, whether it's individuals, whether it's nations of peoples, into salvation. And then likewise with the establishing of princes around the world, well, basically through Christendom, princes came out of the church gave birth to princes, like quite literally in a number of ways, and they came to rule much of the world for a long time. Even to this day, is some of that. God willing, we'll see more of it again. But either way, and yeah, because of that, you can see many people throughout the ages in their writings. They're all praising the church. They praise the beauty and the holiness and the grandeur of the church. And so I think all of these things are fulfilled just fine with an ecclesial reading.
All right, so there you go. We have that. I know this is where the Greek. We need more time to go through the Greek, where I really wonder if the Greek has like something that would explain gendered wise that we know who the thy is, because I know with Latin a lot of that gets locked in just by how the language is laid out. You read Greek unlike me, so I don't know if you could see anything really quick there in verse 13.
Interesting. So 13, the daughter Tyre shall adorn with gifts. Well, it says proskinesis after, and she will pray to him. Is that even in the verse? That's interesting. Yeah, there's like a whole part of the verse, like the first part of the verse, that's just not there. It says kai proskinesis after, and she will pray to him. That's just not in the English. that's interesting.
All right. Well, we're gonna have to translate that, and my Orthodox Study Bible is too far away right now, so we'll to be continued in the comment section, I suppose, because now I'm curious. We said, let's see, the saints are alive. It's a consulting the dead, a specific ritual of witchcraft that you specified. We have people debating here about that. Let's see. And while we're looking,
I used to entertain that necromancy argument against praying to the saints, but not anymore. I don't think it works.
Why not?
It doesn't. It's just because it presupposes a particular thing, that there's this thing called necromancy. You're literally raising people from the dead. Like you're bringing their souls into the mortal realm and you're reanimating them in some way, which is just not what happens when you're praying to saints in heaven.
So can it be in the spectrum of necromancy in some way, that you're doing some sort of ritual in order to exact some sort of power from them?
I mean, I'm sure there's certain saint prayers or whatever that could approach somewhere towards that, or some other sin. But just simplicity, if someone just at some point, oh, St. Anthony, help me find my car keys, that's not necromancy. It's just not.
Well, there you had it. You could use St. Anthony to find your car keys. Now, before we do some audience questions, let's do some plugs. So the other Paul, we have your channel below. What are you up to? Seems like you disappeared. Did you become like a white nationalist or something? It seems like people are banning you.
No, I'm just engaged in a lot of the Christian nationalist political stuff, including more explicit discussions on things like race and government and religion and all that stuff. And yeah, I'm openly, like, as a matter of principle, I openly argue that race is actually an important factor in civil society, something to account for, and that just as we have natural good loyalties to those of our immediate family and extended family, that also extends up to like ethnicity or race. That also works for that as well. And I think a lot of the church has forgotten that,
Now,
unfortunately.
the stupid question. Well, yeah, what's this have to do with religion? Honestly speaking.
So what did you say? What's this have to do with religion?
Because it seemed like the other Paul was this big commodity, and like, I'm not paying too close attention. It's like he kind of disappeared. It's stuff about race or whatever. It seems like it's kind of hamstrung you, and so it has to be very important to you that you're knowingly being hamstrung. So my question then is, what is the real religious import of this, or is it just political?
It's religious import because in one thing, all areas of knowledge, morality, or whatever, even if they seem disconnected, they're all actually connected. And so it's religious for me minimally in that it's truth, it's moral truth, it's philosophical truth, and we have to uphold that as Christians. But second, I also believe a lot of people are abusing the testimony of Scripture. They take Scripture as being this total racial egalitarian thing. Oh, there's no differences between any races whatsoever. You can't have particular ethnic loyalty, at least if you're European. Otherwise, if minorities do it, that's okay. We leave them alone. And I'm dedicating a fair bit of time because I see that as the need of the hour, basically. So that's why I've kind of emphasized that more than the Protestant apologetic stuff, although I'm getting more into that as well, especially with Anglican materials, which I do have in the work right now.
So it sounds like it's more a moral issue to you?
Yeah, it is very much a moral issue. Yes.
Okay. I suppose, like, I've got all sorts of moral issues I have opinions on, but it's sort of like the end of the day, the question really is, as a Christian apologist, what is the import to evangelization and defending the faith? So yeah, it's interesting because it does seem like it's hamstrung you. So it must be really important. We've never talked about this.
I'd be game to if you want to.
Not really. Okay. Honestly,
fair enough.
You have to remember, I'm a Michelin to begin with, right? So like, people will say that because I'm married to a Cambodian that like that's miscegenation, but you have to actually consider that because I'm Italian Jewish, miscegenation already occurred. Yeah. So what am I preserving at this point? And then like, oh well, this is all wrong. Well, I'm sorry I was born, right?
I mean, that's literally me. That's literally me. I'm half Australian, half Lebanese. So my opinions. I actually think
Lebanese aren't they a kind of white in your opinion, or not really?
They actually are more than other groups in the Middle East. They actually are. They do have a lot more of like European or Japhethic, if you will, admixture, but they're still heavily Semitic. And so I am functionally a race mix. And so because of that, I think that was I actually think me being a race mix of this specific kind was actually a deliberate blessing from God for multiple things. And I think one of them is actually because of this issue coming up. It gives me a very powerful rhetorical card to basically say, well, my opinions that I hold, it's actually in a way against my fleshly interests. I should want to pursue the opinions which say, oh, race doesn't matter, therefore being a race mix of any kind, that's totally fine, no issues whatsoever. But with my opinions, I'm like, look, race mixing, I never say that it's like evil per se, like I've been explicit with that. But I have said that it's not normal and it should not be normal because there can be issues that can arise from that. And as far as I've seen it as a blessing for me, it's also had disadvantages for me. And so I actually have an interest to hold the opposite opinions that I do.
Well, that gets into personal things because, for example, the relational dynamics of interracial couples or even couples of different religions, you can't. There's certain default settings you don't have. Past the in love stage of any relationship where like, oh, we have this in common, we have those values in common. And they're like, no, because you have entirely different backgrounds without even getting into whether anything's genetically reinforced at any sort of level.
Yeah. And that is a real consideration too. Yeah.
There's a question of prudence which even if something's not immoral, it might be imprudent. And, that's something that's not spoken about enough, because honestly, I think most people are just motivated by hate, actual hate. I just don't like these people. And so you don't have a sort of, you don't have this passion on either side in addressing a question like that. But I sort of feel this is an issue that's so far gone, it's not even worth fighting. It's like picking a losing battle on purpose, and it's Christians do that a lot, I've noticed. So be that as it may. I wasn't really planning to get into that topic, so I'll just drop it at that point. So yes, they could. So you're still doing stuff on your channel. You have anything else going on these days? You're not as hot and heavy as Twitter, I think, as it used to be. Is it mostly the channel? Are you still looking to do this full time? Are you looking to get out of it, become clergy? What is your goal at this point?
I am actually still looking to make the channel full time, and so the biggest thing for there is for people to become some financial supporters. And what I found is actually, as we were discussing, I just saw an email pop up saying another person became a pretty decent level supporter. So yay, that gave me a big confidence boost. So that's what I'm hoping for, turn into a full time thing. And I'm basically just like over these past few weeks, you can probably notice my upload frequency, I'm kicking things back into gear. I'm actually going to be making it properly regular as I've always wanted it to be. And including right now, I've actually I've made some really fancy video series intros for different series of videos of mine, which are like, high quality VFX, super professional. And they're all basically for different video series, which will be a lot more focused on like the apologetic stuff, Christian history, theology, Bible, et cetera, et cetera. And the latest big one I'm working on right now is the first in a video series just called Anglican Doctrine. It's literally about Anglican doctrine, but trying to give those answers on what the Anglican tradition believes on X, Y, or Z in like a comprehensive and principled manner. Because as you might know, there's different factions in the Anglican communion, and it's very unhelpful. I think they all have these unnecessary biases, and I'm just trying to cut right past that to what does the actual tradition say. So that's largely what I'm working on at the moment. I might actually today, I'm probably going to be recording because I've got these new, like, what when you see those TikTokers or YouTube short people, they have those little microphones they're holding, like those really tiny ones and all that. I got one of those called well, it's basically these new kind of lav mic things called the DJI Mic Mini. And that'll basically allow me to record videos with good quality, like anywhere. So not just in my room. So I'm actually planning on recording a video in a series I just call Table Talks, like probably just in my backyard, where I'll be discussing the John Bear lectures that I went to recently, which were really good. So yeah, that's what's happening with me.
There you go, Father John Bear. And did he ask him about origin?
Unfortunately, no, I didn't get an opportunity to. I did. I learned that he's like, I did my best to talk with him, and we get to talk for a bit, but like he's very socially introverted.
Well, hey, that's I am too, unless you're talking about theology or football. That being said, it's you just got another Patreon or subscribe star, whatever sort of supporter. What's my cut? You were here, motivated them to become your supporter. I'm bringing you all this popularity.
Best I can do is 5 cents.
I'll take it. That being said, my plug, of course, is always the Orthodox Church in Cambodia. Please support missionary work in Cambodia. Paul, you're not a far flight. Fly into Cambodia. I'll show you my hood. orthodoxchristiantheology.com/donate. Links are below. Thank you so much, donors. We raised enough to build the security wall around the church in Synodville. We've reached the number, and so I'm going to say, if you want to support translations of saint lives and the just continued evangelism of the church, your donations are what make the channel possible and make that mission possible. So please, Venmo, Patreon, and PayPal preferred, all below, orthodoxchristiantheology.com/donate. Please support the church in Cambodia if this has blessed you. Now, we got some audience questions and comments. If it might sound rude, but I believe problems with the saints or their veneration stems from a low view of the consequences of the gospel. And so I'm not quite sure what the context is here. You're a smarter guy than me. What do you think he's getting?
I think he's critiquing that those people who see problems with praying to the saints or venerating them, those problems only appear because of a low view of the consequences of the gospel. So if I was to steel man it, basically something of a more certain kind of cosmic view of gospel, of the power of the gospel and how it brings life to all things, and the saints are in heaven, are alive, and all that, and they all participate in God and His power, and so by consequence of that, it's valid to pray to the saints. I would assume it's something like that.
We have he follows up. God's requiring Job's friends to ask Job for intercession doesn't get talked about enough. Amazing text in the last chapter, and I talk about it in my commentary, Fellowship of Christ's Sufferings. It's clearly a typology of the intercession of the saints, but more importantly, it's a typology of Christ's intercession on our behalf. And like as Paul was saying, a lot of these Old Testament passages aren't meant to be just, this is the one type, there's no other way to interpret it. But I would say you'd agree with me. I think strictly that's a Christological in its import, that he intercedes for the guilty that wronged him. That's what Christ did, right? And he came back from the dead, right? Like that's what happened to Christ, pretty much. Job obviously almost death. I'm not being literal there. So I do think that passage is more strictly Christological. And speaking of, again, what we find textually compelling, I ran that Greek into Liar GPT. Here's what Liar GPT told me. That Greek says, and you shall bow down to him, and the daughter of Tyre with gifts, your face the rich people shall entreat. And then it says essentially, it thinks, though it's a neutral term, gender neutral, that the queen is being referred to. So there you go. Either side can interpret what they want out of that passage. So the debate could go on. We have Timothy Honeycutt. My comment might have been a bit short-sighted because it's nearly possible to say too much about Christ. My point is that we should remember to understand words toward Mary in context. I need to read a book on the two waves, iconoclasm in the East. It's fascinating how so many people start hating icons in cradle Orthodox regions. And I think a lot of this, I forget where I was reading this, but essentially the argument is it really is kind of like a modernist sort of heresy is how it looks like that people saw the excesses per se with the veneration of the saints, with the veneration of icons, because there was criticism also against relics, not as much as icons, but they were coming up at the same time. And even to the degree, though, the iconoclasts moderated even venerating the cross, which is why in the 9th century councils, they would have the crucifix out in order to show as kind of a snub to the iconoclast. And so that being said, it seems to be this modernist, this pre-modernist sort of heresy, probably in light of Islam is my best understanding of it. Like, well, they're beating us in battle and they don't have all this, alleged nonsense. So why do we have this alleged nonsense? This must be a problem, blah, blah, blah. We also get to the textual stuff where we do have text from St. Epiphanius, or if it's wrongly described, Epiphanetes, and things where there probably was always some sort of undercurrent of maybe not strong resistance in my view, but of some sort of intellectual resistance. We also see in St. Augustine that he doesn't have the highest view of art in general. So that there's also a sort of ascetic import with some of these things. But of course, I'll plug my movie, Hidden History of Early Christian Art, for people that want more on that particular topic. My problem with these apparitions, they become a second revelation, another gospel to many Catholics. I mean, is that true? Usually these apparitions don't teach anything. I mean, does Fatima actually teach something?
Well, I actually agree. I actually agree with David. Okay. Whatever happens in the apparition itself, this goes to basically a lot of the problems you mentioned of actual testimonies? What do people actually see, actually hear? And there's a lot of embellished flavors or whatever, a lot of embellished layers on top of that. But even notwithstanding that, whatever people claim to receive about those things, and whatever lore is passed on about these apparitions, I do agree with David that for many Romanists, particularly Fatima, is basically treated as like a third testament, pretty much.
In a real Roman, maybe not apologetics, but you can't step in a Roman Catholic Church and say, "I have my questions about this." It's more or less, it's absolutely true to the rank and file.
That is a genuinely big issue. Like, to basically treat it like that, it was. Because it is official Roman teaching that public revelation to the church cease, like after the time of the apostles, basically. So I think they're in a tough spot where they want to say Fatima's legit, but then like, oh wait, that's like a claim to public revelation to the whole church. Consecrate Russia to my Immaculate Heart, blah blah blah. How does that not violate our fundamental theology? I think that might be part of the reason why the Vatican still hasn't, like, they've all but officially ordained it, as far as I'm aware. There's like, it's not officially gotten the seal of this is authentic, this is divine teaching. It's like, it's a very common and normally held pious opinion.
Yeah. Come to think of it, I do know that, like, with the Immaculate Conception and with the Assumption, alleged apparitions appear beforehand and say, "You got to do this for me. You got to make this doctrine." And so, yeah, that does sound like it's we're kind of going by Mary making creeds again, like we learned about Gregory the Illuminator. So we have this because we'll get going real soon. John Carlos Stannon's revival is an act of God. I think the jury's still out on his season, but his bat's been a welcome addition to the New York Yankees. Is it a logical argument that Mary couldn't have possibly sinned, at least for the time Jesus was in her womb? What's your opinion on
that? I don't know. I mean, that questions like that really do go into heavily speculative areas of theology that I tend to just not really care about. So I haven't really thought of it, and I think there'll be a number of dimensions you'd have to consider to make an opinion on it. But then, like, ultimately for me, it would be like, well, what do we even get out of it in the end if we answer it?
And so I actually think there's a lot there and too much to get into the moment, but I will make this one comment. A big reason why I believe in the perpetual virginity of Mary is the idea that someone could, in Christ, enter a state where they would come out less pure than they were before is obviously wrong. And I don't think I have to get into a lot of speculative theology to really just say out of principle that is wrong. But that being said, it's not that giving birth is a bad thing. Clearly it's not. But virginity is higher in the scriptures. We see this in 1 Corinthians 7. So the idea that she would lose her virginity by giving birth after conceiving as a virgin is not most fitting. That's for sure, as a Roman Catholic apologist may put it. Yeah. We have all my white friends married Asian women and have mixed kids. Well, at least they had kids. These days, people just marry, not for nothing. When people marry, have relationships, and they don't have children, to me, even if it's a guy and a girl, it borders on homosexuality because it's not about, it's decoupled from actual love and family. It's just about sexual edification. It's a kind of sodomy in that sense. And so so at least they're having kids. Now, it says it does refrain them from becoming extreme in their race views, not saying it's good or bad. So, yeah, that's another thing, right? Someone, let's say they marry whomever of whatever race, like now you kind of married into that race to some degree, right? So, like, let's say if your wife's black, you can't start using the N-word, but my brother married a black girl. So, so the point is, right, like, it's not going to start using the N-word, but you're not going to have some racial views because, like, all of a sudden it comes at the cost of your family to a degree. When things get personal, people are not able to be as dispassionate. And I bet you there's people with terrible marriages that have interracial marriages, and they start becoming racially aware. That's the political best way to say racist. I'm not racist. I'm racially aware, is what they would say. And so that being said, I don't think there's a lot of like impartial. What's the data say? Is this prudent or not? All I can tell you as someone who is biracial by the at least older standard that Jews and Goyim were biracial, and who married an Asian. I have a Cambodian wife, so I'm involved in the mission in Cambodia. Is I love my kid. I wouldn't want it done any other way because I love my kid. But when I look at society as a whole, I can see, I could see certain issues that are involved. Not because, like you said, it's morally wrong, but it does tear apart the fabric of society when it's done at a very large degree.
Yeah, exactly. Like your case of marrying a Cambodian and going to mission in Cambodia. That's one of the actually, not just that it's okay, but actually good cases of an interracial marriage where, okay, you're marrying into that people and you go into to missionize that people. That's actually,
I'm not going to say I got married to Cambodia as some sort of charity. You know what I mean?
No, I get you. That wasn't like your purpose for it, but you did end up.
It works out in God's providence in this way.
Exactly. Yeah.
And here's the thing. Maybe this is a very New York thing, but my view of ethics is one thing to have a view of how society should run, and then another view for things for individuals and friends. Right.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
I'm against illegal immigration, but I'm not against employing that guy who's my friend who doesn't have papers. Again, that's a very New York thing. Yeah. You could say that's wrong. I'm not here to evangelize that sort of opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, I can understand it. And it is very much the thing. It is very much the case with interracial marriage, because I'll just be like straight up, because I believe races are real. They're real moral entities. Like, they're very clear in scripture. God speaks of races as if they're a collective that can do as a collective.
But Moses married a Cushite woman, made his family unhappy.
But yeah, there's a bit more complications with like what was a Cushite at that time. But either way,
well, according to Saint Irenaeus,
they're real. The races are real.
Saint Irenaeus says she's black, and then the point was to show that Israel would bring in the Gentiles. So there's typological import to the miscegenation.
TLDR, and not that it's a problem for me, but like from what I know, like the designation of Cush actually kind of shifted, so it wasn't quite black at the time of Moses. But anyway, putting that to the side. So
by the way, I think Deacon Enoch agrees with you.
Thank you,
our resident Ethiopian guest.
All else being equal, people should marry within their race, keep their race going. It's a continuity. It's harmonious. It's most conducive to societal order and all that. But otherwise, in a case by case basis, and so that's why I believe, like, by default, if you're going to marry someone, you have a burden to marry within your race, unless you have a good reason beyond that, a sufficient reason beyond that to marry outside your race. And you, maybe it was post facto for you. I don't know your case with your marriage.
Oh no, I'm not racially aware. I'm not anti-racist. I'm not pro-racist. I just live my life and deal with people as they come. Maybe that's very 90s, but that's actually my ideology. So people like know where I'm coming from. It's sure. I just deal with people as they come. I think the idea of making a utopian society based on ethnicity is just not going to happen. But for what it's worth, does that mean that because of that, nation should have unmitigated immigration policy and stuff? I don't think that either. I do think immigration needs to be done in such a way which leads to social cohesion. And that transcends even ethnicity. There's linguistic, there's economic, there's national loyalties involved. There's the ability to assimilate and teach and educate people. So I guess I just see it much broader than ethnicity or race, personally speaking. But I'm one of those people who are not offended by both sides. Just don't like get on my case.
As do I. Like, I see there are obviously factors beyond ethnicity. I just like my reason, and I guess part of the reason why I see importance to it, to go back to your earlier question, is because I do genuinely believe that getting this issue wrong is what is actually pushing a lot of, especially young men, away from the church, where they become, if you will, racially aware, but they see that so many Christians around them just poo-poo the entire idea. And I think they're abusing scripture when those Christians do that, and they're pushing people away from the faith. So that's actually that, and also as you mentioned, there are some genuine, just outright haters. So they're not principled on these issues. They just hate other races. So those two things are like two of the key reasons why I'm getting into the mix on this issue.
One thing why I'm not really offended by it is because if you know anyone who's not white, well, they are way more racist than racist white people.
Oh yeah.
I'm just saying,
that's part of the issue.
If I could get along with those people, and I don't mean like, oh, look at, if I get along with non-white races, why can't I get along with white races? So that makes sense. I try to get along with everybody. Exactly.
Yeah. And that's simply because, like, well, what is even racist? Racist can literally.
So funny things when you walk in Cambodia, when you walk into a Vietnamese neighborhood, the Cambodians start getting like kind of snippy, and then the Vietnamese get snippy with them. There's something going on.
That's true.
And I'm the white dude. I don't care.
And that's the problem that you mentioned with like the term, when you bring up the term like racism, like, because in the end, in common parlance, it doesn't. If it just meant, oh, you just have like this irrational, rabid hatred of other races, then yeah, that's obviously wrong. Unfortunately, racism can, in many cases, does just mean you have an awareness of your race, and you have a particular loyalty to it, akin to having a special loyalty.
All
to
I
your
could
family.
say is
that's
it's just take it to the 21st century, where if people that aren't, that are biracial making claims about racial purity, it's just, everything's got a niche these days. There was something with I won't say his name, but that very big Roman Catholic influencer who is, I think, ethnically Mexican, but he says things that are pro-whites, and it's maybe I know in the past that Hispanics are classified as white, so I don't know if there's some sort of part of racial ideology I'm not aware of that people ascribe to the president that's similar to or whatever that is. But there's a niche for everything these days. I guess that's my point. But as Christians, we're called to ask people to repent from sin, right? We're trying to call people to salvation, which is salvation from sin and to union with God. We want to strengthen people in order to have Christ-like suffering. The church needs to equip people for these things. And so I guess that's why, to me, all that stuff, it's fun to talk about, but it's, to me, it's not relevant, and we could disagree on that. But that's why it's like, to me, it's an issue that people don't hear me talk about. Maybe we go to your channel and you could grill me on it. There you go.
Cain is a bane.
Well, anyway,
hey, George is a good point. Before you sign off, George is a good point. I thought it was when you married a black that you could start using the N-word. That's a good point.
Why? No, I've never seen that ever. I've never seen that. I don't know. We would have to ask more people. I'm gonna have to ask my brother. He doesn't do that. So what do I know? Races belong to certain religious traditions. You should be Roman Orthodox based on your race, or it's a betrayal.
Nah, it's silly.
Again, because the Roman Catholics used to be Orthodox, so they got to return to their roots.
That argument, it is genuinely like just respectfully Hercules. That's just no, because these are distinct traditions that make exclusive truth claims, and that's the principle upon which they're predicated. They're not. It's not like the old pagan order where it's like they believed that, oh, we have our gods, and okay, you have your gods are equally real, but we just serve our gods, you serve yours. No. These are traditions where it's like, we are the ark to salvation. This other side is not. And so the principle for joining them in that sense then is not, oh, is it in my race or not? It is, well, is it true or not? And so that is one area where, like, if you see that you're, on the one hand, your race adopts a false religion, and on the other hand, the true religion is only adopted by other races, for your salvation, for ultimate fealty to God, you'd have to go against what the rest of your race is doing, because in the end, why are you loyal to your race in the first place? Because
billions must be baptized.
Because your race is like a secondary cause of your being.
He's trolling. Calm down. Good.
Oh,
he's trolling.
Darn
it. All right. So then,
but I have seen that argument.
Billions must be baptized. we want to evangelize people in Cambodia, make it the next Korea, but Orthodox, right? We want to make Cambodia a Orthodox Christian country. And so please
What a
support
left
the
hook.
mission there. Links below. And I will end this show as I end all of them by quoting Jesus Rock. Fight to death for the truth. The Lord God will fight for you. Have a great day, guys.